Hey guys, Ice Hockey Aussies here for another week of Power Rankings. To get us kicked off is myself with P32. I've got no movement this week with the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Alrighty. Um, I've got a little higher on them actually. I'm at 30 with the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Oh, moving up. Yeah,
Uh,
I
it,
just
it's not
I
not
just
really
haven't
on
seen
them. It's
enough.
just other teams. That's it.
Yeah, that's fair. I contemplated. I almost moved a team that I don't think's even been um last on my list all year, almost into 32. So yeah, they definitely almost came off the bottom, but I haven't seen enough from them. I still think they're quite poor. And I don't think the trade deadline has helped them out at all. So
No,
yeah,
I
it's going
definitely
to
agree.
be
I still
interesting.
think they're quite poor. Um, I guess my only thing is that they win a game this week where the other two teams below them don't,
Yeah,
and their record's somewhat similar to one of them, but definitely better than the other. So that's why I've gone a little bit higher. I do think they're playing competitive, but they still obviously have their flaws that they've had all season. But yeah, that's my reasoning for 30 instead of 31 or 32
yeah,
already.
for sure.
My pick for my 32 actually. So yes, my 32 is the San Jose Sharks.
Yeah,
So
they were the team that I was considering at 32.
yeah, so I made the move. They're 2-7-1 in the last 10. They've just traded out probably one of the best assets, if not best, in Timo Meyer. So they're losing that goal production. They lose all games this week. They got absolutely whammed by Washington, 8-3. Lose to St. Louis 6-3, and then get defeated by Montreal 3-1. So a lot of goals conceded, and they're not scoring the goals that they were. Obviously losing the best goal production. So yeah, that's my new 32.
Yeah, big loss. I definitely agree with that decision. I was probably yeah, like right on that edge to sort of put them at 32. I think it's been coming for a while. Their records just slowly gotten worse, and I think their overtime losses have sort of overshadowed um probably some of their really poor performances
Yeah,
over the time as well. So yeah, it's sort of really starting to crumble. And I think without Timo Meyer and a couple other assets that they moved on, I think they'll continue to struggle.
yeah. Well, they're only going to get worse. And like you said, they got the least amount of wins in the league. 18. The
Hmm.
next lowest is 20 with Columbus, really living off those OT points.
Yeah, 100%. Without those OT, but you know, OT does mean that they're in the game.
Yeah, it's
That's
a
one of the
draw
big
basically.
things.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's definitely they've struggled to win this year. Um, But yeah, moving on to P30, I got a team just yeah, if you wanted the perfect definition of Jekyll and Hyde, 1 week 5 game winning streak, next week 4 game losing streak. It's the Chicago Blackhawks at P30.
yeah. I dropped them bit harder to 31 just because of that 4 game losing streak, and I think
Yeah,
it was also because of who they lost to.
yeah, and not to mention, you know, they lose Patrick Kane, they lose Max Domi. Um, that's two big pieces to why they were probably on that win streak a little bit. I know Kane missed a couple of them, but yeah, it's yeah, without those guys to sort of power them, I feel like it's only going to get worse for them.
Yeah, exactly. And they lose to other teams in this ranking. They're obviously above them, but Anaheim and Arizona, teams that haven't been
Yeah,
great, and they were kind of I wouldn't say demolished, but definitely defeated by them. They didn't really show up. And then obviously they had Dallas and Nashville, which are harder games, but they still, lackluster. So definitely on the slide from a pretty high last week.
sure.
Alrighty, on to P29. I have the Philadelphia Flyers, dropping off a little bit.
Yeah, they are slipping at the moment, aren't they? They're finding it very hard to win. Um, their grit's sort of not carrying them at the moment. But
Mm.
I don't have them as low, but yeah, one spot higher at 28.
I'm amazed I didn't throw him at 32 because of the Lemieux trade, but uh, but they're 2-6-2, and last 10, they've just been very ordinary. They only play the one game this week, which is really weird scheduling.
Yeah.
That's a whole video in itself. But in that one game, they do get a point against a pretty good team in the Rangers. But yeah, just another loss, and they just not looking great, honestly.
Yeah, it was probably the reason I couldn't drop them at that extra position. Um, but yeah, it's definitely heading south for them, which honestly isn't the worst thing for Philly fans if you're out there. Like the lower you drop, the more chance you've got, obviously in the Bedard races. But yeah, it's like you're not playing for much. You've got absolutely no chance of making playoffs. Um, your wins now are pretty much just for morale and you know, some momentum taking into next season. But yeah, I wouldn't be overly disappointed as a Philly fan if they keep losing and keep dropping. If they can drop below Montreal, Vancouver, it just helps them in the draft lottery.
Yeah, nah, you're not wrong there.
All right, at number 29, I've got the Arizona Coyotes. Um, I still like the grit they play with, to be honest. It's enjoyable to watch, but they do just have those moments where they can't pull anything together. They also lose Jacob Chikrin. Who was the other guy they lost? Why can't I remember who?
The Richie, they did trade Richie. Um,
They traded Richie out, but there was another one, wasn't there? Oh, Ghost. They
oh
traded
yeah,
Ghost to
good.
spare. Yeah, I was like, they traded their two main defenders out. What? But yeah, so they lose Chikrin and Gostisbehere. So and then obviously Nick Ritchie as well. So they're only getting weaker, but it does present a fantastic opportunity for their youngsters to sort of step up. Um, at the same time, their youngsters get all the game time, get the experience, probably leads to them losing more games than winning. And just overall, it's fantastic for their franchise. They get some game time into some young players, get to see who's good, who's got it, who doesn't, all whilst lowering themselves in the standings.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Well, they had the fourth worst shot differential. Columbus had the worst. They were just slightly above, better than Vancouver and Detroit, and that's kind of been their staple all season. Is that they just get outshot, and they did lose some pretty heavy games, but they did defeat Chicago this week and then lose to Dallas on a back-to-back. Um, so yeah, that's why they just go up just a little bit though, because they did get that Chicago win, and I feel like out of all these teams below, their goaltender Vamelka is one of those players that can just steal a game, whereas I don't feel that threat from the ones below
yeah, it's fair.
already. 27. I have a team on the high. It's Anaheim Ducks, moving all the way from 32 for me last week. It's a +5.
Yeah, big move for you, that's for sure.
Oh, it's one more for
Not
you.
yeah. Yeah, but they were your 32, man. That's a big jump. But
I don't know.
no, they
I
they had a
think
good week.
all these teams are pretty sucky, but yeah, they had a good week. They beat Chicago. They OT lose to the Caps, and then they beat Montreal. So 5 out of 6 points. You take that every day of the week, and honestly, it was pretty easy schedule. It's probably one of the easiest of the week, but they still get the job done, which a lot of these lower ranked teams don't, and that's what I like to see. So that's why they get the boost.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, as you said, like most of these teams are, they're in the Bedard race for a reason. And um, yeah, it's very easy to sort of swap them two or three positions week on week, depending on how they go. Because at the end of the day, if one of these teams win three in a row, it generally means they're going to have gained. 4 to 5 points on every other team below them. So, and that's pretty much what happened. They pick up 5 points, and all the teams below them pick up what, 1 to 2 points at max, if that.
Yeah, something like
So
that. Yeah.
yeah, it's just one of those things that week on week with these lower teams, there's not too much that separates them. It's more just the current performances they're putting up.
Alrighty.
All right, on to 26. I have the Vancouver Canucks.
Okay. I actually have them a bit higher at 24.
Oh,
Yes, +4 for me.
yeah,
Oh, you're just a lot lower than last week. That's why.
I had them at 30.
Um,
No, I didn't mind their week. Um, Somehow, surprisingly, they're actually looking quite good after the Bo Horvat trade.
yeah, it's
The
weird how
only
some
the
teams do that.
the only L that I will give them, and I think it sort of held me back of potential, pushing them any further, was just trading out that first for Hronik. I thought that was god awful, as we spoke about in the trade video. But
Yeah.
yeah,
No, I get that, but they get the OT win against Dallas. They only lose by a goal against the Wild, and then they beat Toronto 4-1. I would say though their shot differential in those three games is -44. So that's concerning. But they get what, like 5 out of 6 points? No, 4 out of 6 points.
4 out of 6. Yeah,
Yeah, it's good. And like you said, when teams get like this many points, it's normally boost you up a bit. I think they are playing some decent hockey as well. They still obviously have major flaws, like all these teams down here, but I just like them and fear them more than a couple other teams.
yep. And well, I think they scored two shorthanded goals in the same power play for the first time in forever. So yeah, it's an interesting. They have a fair bit of potential. I just think their management needs to change. Their concept is just, no, we need to enter win now mode.
Mm.
Um, Even though they're not at win now mode.
They
That
need,
they're at,
yeah,
we need to acquire pieces that fit our team, and we can do that through the draft. But instead, they go and, like they've done, they get a first round for Horvat, and then they just hand it off for Hronik. It's just their management is the biggest issue with this franchise. I think
yeah,
if you get a good management into that team, they can turn it around. They've got the pieces there. They just need a management that knows what they're doing.
yeah. I'd say they need a Userman manager who's not afraid to do he like if that was the Vancouver, they probably would have sold things and gone for it. But as we know, Userman's sold a bit, and he's building more for the future. And
Mm.
just seems Vancouver management is just so afraid of doing that.
Oh, 100%. And it's shattering because so many teams that have gone on to be dynasties, they started from rock bottom, right? Like you look at the Chicago, the Pittsburghs, like the Tampa, Colorado even, like they started at rock bottom. They were the absolute just dog shit of teams before becoming what they became.
Yeah, you just have to look at New Jersey. Took 10 years of
Well,
being ordinary to finally get good, and now they'll probably have a 10-year dynasty in a sense. Uh,
exactly. It also took them actually accepting a rebuild rather than trying to just do a fast one and be relevant, to actually turn into something. And like that's what other teams have to sort of look at and go, well, why do we just keep being mediocre and never turn into anything whilst these other teams are, becoming Stanley Cup contenders and winners? Oh, it's because they actually go through a proper rebuild instead of just trying to be relevant. Like, yeah,
Alrighty. On to P26. I have a team not moving. It's the St. Louis Blues. Just
yeah. Yeah, I've got them one above,
Yeah, yeah, your
but
mistake.
it's a
But
very
it's
hesitant. Yeah, it's a very hesitant one above because,
yeah,
they are
they lose
not
to
great.
Seattle, they beat the Sharks, and then they lose to LA. So the teams they lose against are quality teams, and they beat Sharks, which you'd somewhat expect them to beat, though that's kind of a competitive team game in regards to where they are in the power rankings. But yeah, just still ordinary. Obviously, they've traded out some players, so they're always going to get a little bit worse. But unless they got one of those magic ones where they get better with trading out the good players. But yeah, no, I feel like they'll be here for a while, depending how their off season next year goes. But yeah, pretty solid 26 for me.
Yeah, no, I agree that they've won one in their last eight. So yeah, they're heading south pretty quickly.
Mm, alrighty.
All right, on to my 24. I've got a team not going anywhere this week for me, the Montreal Canadiens.
Alrighty, they're my 25.
Well, they slipped down one for you. I just haven't minded what I've seen from them. I don't get me wrong, I don't think they're doing anything special, but um, they're competing. Yeah, they lost to Anaheim, but they competed really well against the Kings. Um, and then they obviously beat San Jose. So I like the competitive nature from them. They seem to be in games, which is pretty much all you can ask for at this point of the season. Um, but yeah, it's it's as good as you're going to get from Montreal, to be honest.
Yeah, well, they're like what 4-6-0 in their last 10. It's kind of been where they're at, just slightly below 500. They've only lost 4 games in OT or shootout. And they got 26 wins compared to Vancouver's 25, but 1 game extra played. It's pretty even. They're very competitive. They've been competing in pretty much all their games. But yeah, it was just the Anaheim loss for me that just made them move down just that one. And Vancouver having a better record this week. I understand the Anaheim game was on a back-to-back, so we know they are harder. However, they only went from LA to the Anaheim, which is not far at all. So yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's what solid 25. They've been around here all season, so I guess I'll move on to 23 unless you have anything else.
Yeah, I'm good. Let's move on.
Alrighty, team that's a falling star. It's the Detroit Red Wings at 23, the big one.
Yes, yes, very big one. They've gone from being in a wild card spot and looking like they were gonna sort of ruffle some feathers to basically just openly admitting that they're not a playoffs team and they're not going to be in the playoffs this season within like a week.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
Well, like Yuzman said, the Ottawa game was like the best test of playoff hockey they've had for a while. And you're losing 6-2, then 6-1. It shows that they weren't ready. Obviously, Ottawa's
Hmm.
kicked up different gear now, so it's not the same Ottawa they were used to. But yeah, like Yuzum said, show that they weren't ready. And he's happy to sell some assets that UFAs or people that won't re-sign or they can't re-sign for whatever reason, and get some more assets and then build for the future. I feel like next year will be their year to go for it, but it's a bit hard for a Detroit fan, having the start they had and showing that they were going to be in that wild card run, and then to drop out with 20 something games to go.
Oh yeah, I definitely feel like it would have been a tough decision for Usman to make, but I also think it's the right one. Because I've said it a few times through this year. I trust Usman, but my biggest concern for Detroit was they've got all these UFAs, and if they risk it for playoffs, you know, will that affect their rebuild? Will that affect them long term? And obviously, Yzerman's looked at it and gone, well, yeah, I think it will. So he's gone and gotten rid of all of these players that maybe he's had a conversation with and said, and they've gone, nah, I'm looking to go elsewhere, or maybe he's looked at them and gone, I don't see you in our future plans, and done the right thing, moved them on, got picked. There was only one questionable one trade that he made that I was confused about, but I think everything else he's done has been really, really good. Um, so yeah, ultimately it sucks if you're a Red Wings fan because you probably thought only a week ago that you were potentially going to play playoffs, and now it's basically been guaranteed that you're not going to play playoffs this year. You've sold a bunch of players and you are still in a rebuild. However, I will say this: trust the man. He's definitely seems like he knows what he's doing and he's got a plan. So you've just got to, yeah, steady the ride, holding off on your playoff berth rather and not mortgaging your future is much better than playing the playoffs this year, losing a bunch of players for free, and then being dog shit for the next 3 or 4. Trust me, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Alrighty. You're 22.
All right, on to 22. I've got moving up a position, but yeah, I'm not going to move on them too fast just yet because we've seen how they've burnt us time and time this year. It's the Washington Capitals.
Alrighty. Yeah. No. They haven't done too much more to earn any further positions. They had a somewhat decent week. 2 out of 3 wins. They beat Sharks dramatically, like for 8-3. They, get an OT win against Anaheim, and then they get pretty destroyed against Buffalo 7-4. So very up and down sort of team. They win the 2 games they should. They lose a game that they should be competing in, and they lose it pretty significantly, conceding 7. So yeah, very ordinary. They've obviously sellers and whatnot. So honestly, the more games they lose, the better for themselves. And definitely out the race. I don't know what the future holds for this team because I don't even know if they're going to be able to compete next year just because of how the Metro is. So, interesting team.
Yeah, I definitely see it uh, as a big struggle for them to come back next year. Right now, I think as a Capitals fan, your biggest sort of thing to look forward to is Ovechkin breaking the record, either probably not next year, but the year after. Um, I definitely think he's gonna do that before he's got 3 seasons left after this year. So yeah, and he's only got about 79 goals left to do. So I think that's probably all the Capitals fans will have to look forward to over the next few years. Because yeah, I don't see how they get back into a Metro um playoff spot, especially with Carolina, New Jersey, and the Rangers. They're going to dominate for the next probably five plus years. So um yeah, I think Washington's dynasty is probably well and truly over, um, unless their management can somehow swindle something in the off season.
Alrighty. I have got at 21. I have the Calgary Flames. So 2 teams
Yep.
gone through that probably shouldn't be down this low this year, but they are.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't know. Like they're pretty hard out of the race now. Like not out of the race, but they definitely have made it pretty much impossible, near impossible for themselves. Improbable, probably the better word. They get shut out by the Wild. They lose to Toronto in a close game, and then they get an OT loss against Boston. So they had a very hard schedule this week, but they get 1 point, one out of 6. It's hard to get that in regards to a wild card playoff um, chase, and I don't think they've been playing great hockey either. You know, especially in regards to the type of roster they have, kind of surprising. But yeah, been very ordinary for a while now.
Yeah, 100%. I think, the only thing keeping them even remotely close to the wild card spot is the fact that Winnipeg Jets have just completely shut the bed. Um, they're equal on games and 7 points back from the Winnipeg Jets, and they're not playing themselves into any sort of form that tells you they're going to make up those 7 points. Even with Winnipeg, going on the slide that they're on, I still can't see Winnipeg sliding for long enough that's going to allow the Calgary Flames to take over any spots. And also, if any team's going to take that spot from Winnipeg, it'll be Nashville over the Flames at this point, even though Nashville were sellers at the deadline. So, yeah, I think you could pretty much put a slash through the Flames. I think their season's done.
Yeah, nah, not a hard call to make, but yeah.
No.
Alrighty, on to 20.
All right. In 20, all right, I got a team. We pretty much just compare these two teams all year because of the trade they made, but the Florida Panthers.
Yeah, that's where I've got him as well. I just don't rate this team that highly at all. Uh,
No.
I've seen other people be higher on them, and I don't quite get it, honestly. Like, they beat Tampa, but Tampa's been on a slide for probably the last 2 weeks. Um, they lose to Nashville, team that you just mentioned, and they beat Pittsburgh 4-1. Look, they had a somewhat decent week, getting 4 out of 6 points, but I'm just still not high on them. When I watch them, they have flashes of greatness, and honestly, because they do have players like Kachuk and whatnot, but they still got many flaws. I think it is really down to that coaching. They didn't address it, and I don't see them making playoffs purely because of that. And we've beaten that baton pretty hard this year in regards to the
Yeah.
coaching and whatnot. But I don't feel like they're going to make it, especially with the other teams that just look so much better at the moment.
No, no, I agree with you. I don't think they're going to make it either. I think that it's if you're looking at it, and I know they're the young team, the young and up and comers, but Ottawa and Buffalo look the most threatening out of any of these teams to take the two wild card spots from the Islanders and Penguins right now. Florida have just been the same team every week. Every single week they've been the same team. They go 500 basically. They might have one week where they go just slightly above 500, but then the next week they'll go slightly below and it'll even out to 500. Like you can go over all of their weeks lately and yep, this week they were slightly above, but last week they were 500. The week before they were 500. The week before that slightly above, but the week before that well below. Like it's just they're a average team this year, and they are right where they have performed consistently this season, like average.
Yeah,
And I don't see them turning it around in the last 18 games to steal a spot from any of the four teams above them in the Islanders, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, or Ottawa. I I know it's anyone's race because they are that close right now. I mean, Washington are still in it as well, but it truly does feel to me that it's between Ottawa, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, and the Islanders.
yeah, I'm the same. Alrighty, on to P19, a very interesting P19. It is the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, you've
Yeah,
dropped them just as far as I have.
yeah, it feels weird just because how they were, during the start and middle of the season. But they only pick
Hmm.
up one win this week against Edmonton. It was on a back-to-back after versing Edmonton and losing against them the night earlier. So they both beat each other. They lose to the Kings in shootout, and then they get shut out by the Islanders at the start of the week, 4-0. I just looking ordinary. Like they're conceding a lot of goals as well. They concede what, 5, 6, 6, and then 4. So even with probably one of the best goaltenders in the league in Hellebuck, it just shows what's in front isn't doing it, and it's a shame because I feel like Hellebuck's probably one of, if not the best goaltender in the West. probably one of the players that deserve at least a cup run, let alone a cup. And yeah, I don't feel like the Jets are doing him right just by sucking at the worst time. Hopefully they turn it around before the end of the season because I feel like they do deserve to make the playoffs. How their start of the year was, but definitely on a big slide now.
Yeah, they're definitely lucky that they put up as much as they did beforehand, because it definitely has held them in good stead. That's the reason why they haven't lost their wild card spot yet. But you know, they have lost Pierre-Luc Dubois, so that is a big loss for them. Um, I know Hellebuck has been amazing, but his form is slipping. Um, whether that's just fatigue from pretty much being a big reason why they were so hot early on. I don't know, but yeah, look, they've still got enough in the bank to hold them in that wild card spot. I mean, yeah, Nashville, I can't see being able to maintain it with what they gave away at the deadline. Calgary just don't look like they're going to get it done. So I think Winnipeg are okay, but they'd want to turn it around pretty quickly. That's for sure.
Yeah, I guess my biggest concern with them is they did nothing at the deadline. They only brought in Nemesnikov for a fourth round pick, and adding depth is always good, but I don't feel like it's the saving grace that they need. Um, and I understand that they're at the cap in a sense. I think they only got like 3.6 mil in the bank, but I would have liked to seen them use everything because this is one of the years that they should have been going for it. I feel like, especially with the roster they have. So slightly disappointed with the trade deadline for them, and I feel like that's kind of running into how they're playing now. Is I feel like a lot of the other teams bolster themselves, especially in the East, but a lot of teams bolster themselves, and I don't feel like the Jets did that at all.
For sure. I think it's definitely a tough one, but um, I mean, we'll just have to wait and see. Like we've said, Hellebuck is one hell of a goalie. So if he can sort of find form again and turn it back on, who knows what they'll do. Um, they did also pick up Nino Niederreiter in the deadline. So um, yeah, they made a couple of changes, but nothing too strenuous. However, they should be able to turn it around. I've obviously got worries, but I've still got faith that they'll hold on to that playoff spot. And once they get into playoffs with a goaltender like Hellebuck, um, anything could happen.
Alrighty,
All right. Moving to P18, I've got the Pittsburgh Penguins staying where they are, or where they were last week.
alrighty. I just have to check where I've got them, and I've got them in the same spot, so 18 as well.
Yeah, it's just they had a good week. I'm pretty sure they went. Was it 2-1, 2-1 or 3-1? 3-1. So yeah, not too bad. They had a pretty tough loss against Florida today, but yeah, overall, yeah, good week. Beat Lightning, beat Nashville, beat Lightning again. So good week from them, but I've still got my concerns. I'm still very worried that they're going to be one of the ones that slip out of this playoff race. They made a couple of moves at the deadline, but I'm not really sure it made them stronger. So yeah, I'm 50-50 on them at the moment. So yeah, I just couldn't move them.
Yeah, no, they're definitely one of these teams that are on the brink. I feel like they will go at least to the last like 5 or 10 games before we know that they're not going to make it. If they don't make it, I
Oh,
feel
for
like
sure.
they'll be knocking on the door all season. And I feel like they're one of the stronger teams that could just turn it on, just randomly out of nowhere, just turn it on. They have the ability to do so, but they haven't shown that besides like the start of the season and preseason. They haven't shown that same form since, and that's what worries me. It's been a long season at this point, and they haven't really shown that glimpse ever since. And so yeah, strong 18 had a really good week, and that, I'm like you, I have the same concerns
For
already.
sure.
On to 17, I have another Metro. It's the New York Islanders.
That's where I've got them as well.
Similar boat to Pittsburgh. You know, they've been good, they've been bad. They go up, they go down. They've brought in some people to make them better. They beat Detroit this week. They get a shootout loss against the Wild, and then they beat the Jets 4-0. So they get what 5 out of 6 points this week. It's exactly what you need for a playoff run, and probably I don't know if you'd say an easier week just because the Jets have been on a slide, Detroit's on a slide, um, and the only strong team there I would say at this point is the Wild, and they at least get a point out of it, and they actually were very competitive in that game. So I feel like they're very strong. I do feel like they did make themselves stronger in the trade deadline, but I still have my reserves about them. I would have to see just a little bit more just to see how these trades affected them. So.
Yeah, and their upcoming week is going to be interesting as well because they've got Buffalo, Pittsburgh, and Washington. Three of the teams that are all fighting for that wild card spot with them, right? So this is the week for them. You take 5 out of 6 from this week, and you're probably setting yourself up to take at least one of those spots, right? Um, but if you go 1 from 6 or 50-50, you're leaving the door wide open because they've played more games than Buffalo. They've played more games than Ottawa and Pittsburgh. So right now, if you go on a points percentage, they are outside of the wild card spot, and Ottawa realistically with the form they're in, Ottawa probably overtake them as well. So um, yeah, it's a big week this week because I think if they go 50-50, it just leaves the door wide open. Doesn't really change much. If they stumble, it could cause trouble because they've only got 17 games left. So yeah, this is the week for them to make it as damaging as possible against the
Mm.
others around them for that playoff spot.
Yeah, well, these teams are definitely the ones to fear because these teams are now playing playoff hockey basically because they
Hmm.
have to make it. So they could even be farming off like Pittsburgh did with Tampa. A team that's kind of resting for the playoffs. This team's playing playoff hockey in a sense. They come and just beat these top teams because they need those points, whereas the top teams don't quite need it as much. So they,
Yeah,
they they might be able to siphon some good points later on. But definitely right about next week being the make or break almost.
yeah, for sure. All right. So at 16 to get me started, it's crazy that a seller at the deadline day is sitting in our top 16. But look, they had a great week, 3-1. It's the Nashville Predators.
Yeah. What can you say about the deadline? Like, if you're in the playoff hunt and you're a seller, power ranking top 16, you've gotten all these assets on really some amazing trades. Like it's probably the best scenario possible at the moment. We'll see if it comes crashing and burning. But like I said, they had an amazing week in regards to beating Arizona. They lost to Pittsburgh, which a little tough one to lose. But then they beat Florida and then beat Chicago. So not the hardest of schedules, but they get the wins that they have to get.
Yeah, exactly. They find themselves still in the playoff hunt. So, like I think it's a really good move by obviously the parting gift of the GM before he left. He made a couple of really, really good moves and set up uh Trots for a pretty smooth takeover, to be honest. And he's put him in a great position going forward, whilst they still find themselves in a playoff hunt. So yeah, it's although it's probably not what Nashville fans were hoping for this season. Overall, they've turned a pretty g- yeah, like poor situation into a pretty good outcome. Like they sold players at the deadline, got a lot for them, and they're still competing for playoffs. So if they could make playoffs and still come away with what they got at the deadline, that'd be amazing. That would be one hell of a way to finish the season.
Yeah, kind of the opposite to Detroit in a sense.
Yeah,
Alrighty.
yeah.
On to 15. A team that we've mentioned a little bit is the Ottawa Senators. And
Oh,
boy, have they turned it on for this this run. Like I said, playoff hockey for these teams, so they're obviously playing at a different level than everyone else. They finally made the trade that they needed in Chikrin, and they just look good. They've shown glimpses here and there throughout the season, but they win all four this week, beating thrashing Detroit on a back to back, and the night before. Then they go and defeat the Rangers, a quality win, and they defeat Columbus. So amazing week, and I can't floor them. They look amazing. They look like the Ottawa, sorry, that we thought they would be, and that we kept seeing, but they weren't putting together, and now they're finally putting it together, and they've stemmed one of the defensive woes and adding Chikrin.
yeah, yeah, 100%. Like I've obviously been massive on these guys all year, but how's that last 5 games? They've literally scored 5 goals in 3 out of 5. They've scored 6 goals in the other two, and they've conceded basically 2 goals a game across all 5. So it's just they're firing offensively. Their defense, obviously, with Chikrin coming in, is now improved. Um, yeah, I'm excited to see what they can do with their run home because I truly think that this is one of the teams that are going to take a wild card spot. Um, I'm I'm on the hype train for these guys. I've been a bit disappointed throughout the year with just some of the ways they've lost games, even though they've dominated and they've been so entertaining and so aggressive, but then just poor defensive plays will cost them. Um, but now with Chikrin in that side, I'm just really hopeful for any Sens fans out there that that's going to be the piece that just shores up that defense a little bit and helps you sort of find your way into that wild card spot. Because I reckon the Senators would be extremely exciting to watch in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. Already.
Right, let's go to 14. I'm gonna have a quick check just to make sure, but I think I know who it is. I have the Edmonton Oilers, just a team that flat out is frustrating.
Yeah, no, I've got them in the exact same position, and yeah, like you said, a little frustrating of a team. They beat Jets one night and then they lose to the Jets the other night. Pretty high scoring games. They start off the week losing to Boston and beating Toronto. So they've had a very hard schedule in regards to their week. So it shows that they are, you know, I would say probably below Toronto and Boston, even though they do beat Toronto. I'd say they're still below them in regards to it. And yeah, it was just interesting that they win and then lose against the Jets. I would have liked to seen them win both, and that would have been quite higher on the power rankings. But they keep showing that same flaws that they've been showing all season.
Yeah, it's just they they don't have a team, and I had this sort of argument with an Oilers fan the other day around it where I just said, imagine what McDavid could do with a team. And he goes, yeah, because he doesn't have a team. Imagine if he had, and he went and named Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, Hyman, and Darnell Nurse. And I was like, cool, you've named one line. That doesn't make a team. Like,
Yep.
and not to mention, who the hell is putting Darnell Nurse in that conversation? Like,
If you're adding
I,
Darnell on us,
I,
then you
yeah,
stretch.
and, and that's what I said. I'm like, your comment is completely invalid just purely because you added Darnell Nurse in there. But you've turned around and gone Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, and Hyman. That's four. That's four players. if you include McDavid and then Nurse. That's 5 players in total. That's a power play line. Congratulations. Where's your other freaking 14 players that you need? Like
Yeah,
they just don't have a team, and that's their biggest struggle is that McDavid and Draisaitl can do all the wonderful things in the world, but if you can't put a third and fourth line out there that you can trust, along with any of your defensive pairings, and trust your goaltending, uh, you're not going to win games. Like, I mean, David can score 4 points a game, and they're still probably going to lose just as much as they're going to win. But it's just,
yeah.
yeah,
No, you're not wrong. Um, that's why it hurts in a salary cap era having 15% of your cap go to one player, no matter how good he is. And like
yeah.
to be in comparison, like Draisaitl is still amazing, probably the best passer in the league, and he's only eating 10%. Um, so you could have thrown 5%, which is probably like 5 mil, 4 mil, whatever it is, to someone else, and that's a bottom pairing second liner, if not a third liner, and that's the depth you need. Or you get some two bottom six forwards, or a defender, and they've just been lacking that depth for a long time. And what I fear for them is that's because McDavid, Draisaitl, and all that, they carry so hard and make up for such a bad team that they'll always be middle pack and they won't get the draft picks they need. And I know Oilers shouldn't need draft picks after drafting first overall so many times. They got two first overalls in Nugent and McDavid, and you compare that to New Jersey with Hughes and Heisha, and look where they are, and look where
Mm.
Oilers are, and it's no comparison, and it's kind of funny. So definitely some big issues. I don't feel like they addressed it in the trade deadline. They did get rid of Puljujarvi, but no, they've still got major issues, and I do worry for them going into the playoffs, honestly. Even though McDavid can carry.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like you watched him carry them into a Western Conference final last year, but they got extremely exposed once they got there and got absolutely destroyed by Colorado. So it was like, yeah, cool. Congratulations, they made the Western Conference final. They beat a Calgary Flames in a game like series that there just was no defense. Like there was just no defense last year at all. Um, and yeah, so I know that he can carry them, but I just don't see him getting them there by himself without somewhat of a team effort in a Western Conference final or an actual Stanley Cup final against the best of the best.
Mm,
He's always going to be able to carry them through maybe the first round or a second round because it's a weaker division. But yeah, I can't
yeah,
see him carrying all the way. But you give that man a team, and mate, he could do an Islanders run and win 4 straight. Like he
yeah.
needs a team.
I'd say my other big issue with them, I don't feel like they really have a goalie. Like Stuart Skinner's been great, but Jack Campbell is definitely not someone you want to take into the playoffs. And so I feel like they're going to have to ride Skinner. And if that fails for whatever reason, through injury or something, I think no matter what, they're out of the playoffs, because I don't think they have any sort of backup goalie to take that on. And that is my biggest concern with them. They're basically kind of like in a Jet situation, have to ride one goalie all the way through.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. And you look at last year, the Oilers. Their playoff run was a fresh Los Angeles team who no one expected to really make the playoffs, but they made the playoffs due to a weak Pacific. Then they go and play Calgary in what was just pure offense. And then when they come up against a real, actual cup contender, they get absolutely walloped. And I know people are going to be like, "Oh, Calgary were um, top of the Pacific, all the rest of that," but it's the Pacific for crying out loud. It's not that hard. Um, but yeah, I just can't see him carrying them against teams of Stanley Cup caliber.
Alrighty, moving on to P13. I have a team that's just moves down a couple for me. It's the Buffalo Sabres. So
Hey, Yeah, I've got them at 12.
Yeah, like they had an average week. They beat Washington 7-4 quite comfortably. That my big concern was losing to Columbus. I watched a bit of that game, and yeah, it was a little bit concerning. Then they get absolutely walloped by Boston 7-1, and I know it's Boston, but you shouldn't be losing 7-1 if you want to be a playoff team. And then they go and beat a pretty downs or issue run Tampa at the moment. Resting players and whatnot, and yeah, I have concerns with the Columbus and Boston game, and that's why they just moved down a couple for me, especially with a couple teams below them just showing that little bit more this week.
Yeah, for sure. I mean that Columbus game, you really shouldn't be losing to a side like that, especially when you're trying to push for that wild card spot. And that sort of that Boston game. The one thing I will sort of say about that Boston game is it was 3-0. They score an empty net goal to make it 4-0. It goes 4-1. They score an empty net goal to make it 5-1. So there's two empty net goals in that as well. So it probably makes the scoreline a little bit crazy. And then they concede a shorthanded goal when they were pushing hard on the power play to try and generate something. So I think the scoreline probably doesn't reflect exactly how the game went, although Boston did control it for majority of the game. They had a pretty comfortable 3-0 lead. Um, but I definitely think the scoreline gets exaggerated with a couple of those empty net goals.
Well, yeah, you take that out and it's
Um,
5-1, so I don't think it's that outblown. But yeah,
plus, nah, but the shorthanded goal as well. Like remember, it was 3-0, and then they went two empty nets, a shorthanded goal on a power play that they were like all out offense, trying to just score to make a game of it. And then the goal with like a minute left, the game was pretty much done. So yeah, I'd 3-0, 3-1 was probably around where it was. But yeah, still one of those things. That Columbus game's what concerns me a bit, but I still think Buffalo are really strong. And they're gonna come home pretty powerful.
alrighty.
Right. Moving on to my 13. I've got these guys after sort of falling off a bit of a cliff. They made a bit of a comeback this week, and it's the Dallas Stars.
Alrighty. I've got them at 11.
Well, they're
Yes.
moving up for you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to hold out on them because of how bad they have been. I just I needed to just restrain myself a little bit.
Yeah, like I don't know. They got 7 out of 8 points this week. They dominated the first 3 games, even though they do lose the game against Vancouver in OT, but they almost outshoot them by double. They outshoot Arizona by double. They almost outshoot Chicago by double. And then they destroy Colorado 7-3, um, even though they don't outshoot them. So I feel like they looked like their old Dallas Stars, even though they had probably 3 easier games in regards to schedule wise. But they look good, and I got to give them a little bit props for that Colorado game, and that's why I've gone higher on them. They're still very high in the standings as well. What, six overall in point percentage. Won their last 3. They are 4-3-3 in the last 10, but they still have an amazing goal differential, and yeah, I feel like this is kind of where they're at the moment.
That's fair. I don't have too much else to add, to be honest. I think we can move on with
Alrighty.
your 12.
My 12, another interesting one. It is the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah, Jesus, how the mighty have fallen lately, correct? Like it's it's insane. Has has the last 3 years finally caught up with them?
Well, the Lightning has finally hit the floor, and yeah, like they just don't win any of their games this week. I think they only take 1 point out of the week against an OT game against Pittsburgh. They lose to Pittsburgh twice this week, lose to Florida, and then lose to Buffalo. Um, yeah, they were pretty handed in the first game of the week in the Pittsburgh one. They lose 4-1 and get outshot pretty by 12 against Florida. Uh, yeah, like they're finally cracking at the worst time. They've been pretty stable all season, and now they're cracking. And I don't know if they're going to bring it back, but you'd hope so. They do in like at least the next 10 games, because if you don't take some sort of momentum into the playoffs, it can be pretty bad.
Yeah, for sure. It's it's definitely going to be interesting. I like obviously Tampa Bay are one of those teams that I don't think they need too much momentum going into the playoffs. But if you look at their draw, they've got Carolina tomorrow, Vegas this week, Winnipeg, New Jersey, and then Montreal, New Jersey. So they got New Jersey three times in less than a week, basically. Ottawa, Boston, Carolina, Washington, New York Islanders, New York Rangers, New York Islanders, Ottawa, Toronto. Like that's a pretty. There's not too many games there where I'm sitting there going, yeah, that's probably in the bag. I think Philly and Chicago are their two easiest games for the rest of the year.
Mm,
So yeah, they're definitely a team capable of winning those games, but it's definitely not something you want going into the playoffs on a a really bad last 20 games. And that they have the potential to it would take a monumental stuff up on their half, but Buffalo could technically overtake them. Yeah, they're 11
yeah,
points out, but if Tampa keep this form going, because it's not just the fact that they're losing games, they're losing them convincingly, and
yeah.
it's worrying.
Well, my biggest concern for them is the trade deadline movements. The Tanner Jeannot trade is absolutely questionable beyond all belief. I feel like it's up in the ranks of the Taylor Hall Adam Larson trade. Honestly, that's how I feel when I look at it, and I don't feel like that's the move
Absolute
that
fleets.
fix them. And then they go and do what they've done here. They picked up Izemont for Nemesnikov. Like, that's great. Whatever. They don't have much space at all. I think they got like 500,000, but they didn't make any big moves. They lost a lot. They don't have any draft picks. The first rounds for the next 3 years. They don't have the second round for the next two. They don't have the third. They have no picks besides a six and two sevenths this year.
This year. I
Um,
know, it's
they they
insane.
they're not getting any better from the draft basically, and
No,
the aging, yeah, it's concerning. It's definitely concerning. They're maxed out, and this could be the start of the break of the Tampa Bay Lightning. I don't know if it will be because of just how good some of those players are, and Kucherov, Point. Um, Vasilevsky can turn it on in playoffs. Hedman's Hedman, and then they got Sergachev, and they got quality players though still.
they do. The interesting one was the fact that in the Buffalo game today, Kucherov, Stamkos, I think it was Point, didn't play in the third. They were
Yeah,
all benched. Now I don't know if that's just their coach sort of saying, nah, you guys have been absolute dog shit, get off, or if it's them going, nah, you look burnt out, so we're gonna pull you. Like Stamkos played 13 minutes, Kucherov played 16 minutes, Shirelli only played 15 minutes, and Braden Point played 14 minutes.
yeah.
That's
I think they're starting to rest their players, but maybe they've got some bruises and banged up injuries they probably have to manage as well. I don't quite know
Yeah,
what's
so that's
going
the
on.
question, right?
Mm.
That's the question. Is it resting or is it making an example? But either way, all right, let's move on. Let's get into the top 10. Crazy thinking that Tampa aren't in the top 10 at this point, but yeah. At 10, I have not moving anywhere this week, the Seattle Kraken.
Yeah, same for me. Pretty solid 10. Definitely deserve to be in the top 10. I just couldn't
Mhm.
put them any higher. They do get 7 out of, or was it 6 out of 8 points, I believe.
They
Um,
went 3-1, I think, this week.
yeah, they lost to Toronto at the start of it. They beat St. Louis, OT win against Detroit, and then on a back-to-back beat the Jackets. So after the Leafs loss, a pretty cruisy schedule, and that's why I couldn't move them too much. It's just pretty cruisy. They are playing good hockey. It does look like they might have the Rookie of the Year. However, was it Melicelli? However you say his name, from Arizona, is looking like he could compete as well, or at least be in conversation.
Mhm.
But look, a lot to love. I do think they make the playoffs. I think they do some sort of impact in the playoffs, and I like this team. I like how they play. Just a solid top 10 at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. I think it'd be hard to sort of see them slipping out of the playoffs 10 points clear currently. Yeah, great for their franchise in only their second year. Um, yeah, they're playing exciting hockey, so for sure.
Alrighty, P9 team moved down a couple. I got the New York Rangers, and yeah, I've moved on them, even though I still think they're a strong team. Just
They
from
did slip a little bit.
they've
I
just
just
slipped a
didn't
little.
move them.
Yeah, well, they beat LA, though they did get outshot. Um, then they go to OT against Philly, which kind of concerned me. And then on a back-to-back, they lose to Ottawa, a strong Ottawa, and then they lose 4-2 against Boston. So pretty hard schedule just with how Ottawa's been and playing them on a back-to-back. But
Yeah, that's why I didn't drop
mm,
them, to be honest.
yeah, I just had to make a move for other people.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I do know that a couple of teams around there sort of have been performing. But yeah, for me, I still think this is one of the better teams going into the playoffs. I still am quite hopeful for the Rangers. Um, not from the Jersey fan part of me, but from the hockey fan part of me, I'm really, yeah, I think this Rangers team is something special. Um, yeah, they slip up against Ottawa and Boston, but I don't hold that against them too much at this point.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right, I'll move on to my 9. I have staying the same spot as last week. I've got the Vegas Golden Knights. I know you're going to be much higher on these guys than I am.
Alrighty. Well, I got them 8, so I don't know how much higher you think I'll have them, but
Mm. I was waiting for P1 to be honest.
whoa, okay. I don't know what you think of me, but wow,
Nah,
throw me in the gutter.
nah. I just wasn't impressed. They got completely destroyed by the Devils. The other day. Yeah, they should have lost that game. If it wasn't for their goalie, they lose that game 7, 8 goals to 2. Their goalie absolutely stole the show. They had absolutely no right winning that. Um, and obviously that interesting sort of situation with the refs towards the end where um Palat gets called for a penalty shot against Carlson when he taps his elbow with his stick and he gets called for hooking. It's very soft. If you're going to call it, that's cool. But what I struggled with was the end where Brat gets hooked by Carlson. Again, it's very soft, but it's more of a penalty than a penalty shot than it was
Oh yeah, no, the
against
refing's been
Palat.
shit all year. Let's just be real.
Um, So yeah, like I think they got very lucky in that game. I don't think they should have even gone to overtime. I think even though the Devils had to sort of pull it back late, that game should have been well and truly over before then. Hill just stole the show.
Yeah.
I thought they got outplayed by the Canes, and then they obviously got dominated by Colorado. So I'll give them props. They get the points, they get the results that they need, but I just I worry about them. I don't think they're a dominant force.
I'm the same. I have my concerns, but they did have an extremely hard schedule with Colorado, Carolina, New Jersey. New Jersey and Carolina have been pretty much solid 2-3 for a long time now, and Colorado basically top 5. So yeah, find that probably one of the hardest schedules of the week, and they still managed to get 4 out of 6 points. Granted, they probably got outplayed in those ones, but that's the strength of a good team. They win games they shouldn't. So that's why I've
Mm.
got some props on them. But yes, I guess moving on to the next pick, P7 for me, Minnesota Wild.
Oh, P7, hey.
Yeah.
Now you've got me questioning myself. Nah, I do. Okay, yeah. So they're P8 for me. I was like, shit, did I have you higher?
No, I'm a little reserved on this team just a little bit, just because of how they've been up and down. Every time they look like they're going to be amazing, they pull back. But they're 8-1 and
Yeah,
1 in the last 10. Won the last 4. They have an amazing week again. So they start off, OT win against Columbus, shootout against New York, uh, win against Vancouver only by a goal at 2-1, and then they shut out the Flames 3-0. Win all 4. My concern with them is going to OT with Columbus and then going to shootout with the Islanders. That's my concern with their perfect week, but it is still a perfect week. They do look alright. My other concern, they didn't score 4 or more goals this week, where I feel like they had a really good chance, especially against Columbus and Vancouver, and that's my big concern. I feel like they score not too many goals. They
mate.
they they scored the same amount of goals as Vancouver, and they played in 3 games, same amount of goals as Toronto, and they had an average week. So yeah, that's my concern.
You want to talk about goal scoring from these guys? They have not. So I've only gone, oh, wow, I could actually go back even further. They have scored 4 goals once in 20 games.
Yep, that's the vibe I
Once.
was feeling without even looking at stats, is they just don't score goals. But
Yep.
their
So,
defense and whatever's working because they don't concede goals.
and that's it, right? Like, being Jersey fans, we know all about winning cups on the back of defense. So it's definitely there. And at the end of the day, I'd rather have a team that can defend well than a team that can put up 7 goals but can also concede 8. Um, so yeah, props to them. They've been good. I was the same as you, held reserved on doing too much with them because I was like, well, I could put them in my top 5, but I know what happened the last time I did that. So yeah, bit reserved, but definitely liking what I'm seeing from them.
Alrighty.
All right, in P6, another team that I really could have put in my top 5. I wouldn't be surprised if you haven't put them in your top 5. Sorry, if you have put them in your top 5
Yep.
because they probably deserve it. But yeah, it's the Los Angeles Kings.
Uh, yeah, no, I have put them in my top 5. I've
They
given
did make it. Yeah,
They've made it. Uh,
well deserved.
uh,
Well
I,
deserved.
like we were talking off air, I was debating for a long time how, like, basically from P5 to P10 went. These teams are just so close.
Yeah, 100%. They really are. And I yeah, I didn't. Although a couple of teams above them didn't have great weeks, I also didn't see that they didn't have too poor of a week to sort of swap. So it made it really tough for me. Um, but hey, all I can say is, Kings fans, they are right on the cusp and they're playing well at the right time as well. Like we're getting closer and closer to playoffs. They've pretty much secured that playoff spot now, and they're performing well, right? When you sort of need them to, because this is the crunch time. This is the time to be getting wins, and putting your best foot forward.
Mm. No, no, you're not
Besides
wrong.
the Jonathan Quick trade, that one, you almost went to 32 for that one, guys, but let you slide.
They're probably 32 on some other type of power rankings, that's for sure. But um, yeah, they had somewhat of an easier schedule. St. Louis, Montreal, a sliding Jets. and then they verse at the start of the week New York Rangers, which is their one loss. But they do look very strong. Had to give them props. They've been around this mark for a long time, and what their last 10 is 7-2-1 as well. So that a good record. My only downside for them is their goal differential. It's only +3, but they're you look all the teams around them, and they're all double digits quite easily. So that's my only gripe with them at the moment. And they obviously get an extra position just for the Lemieux trade for me. So that's that's what
Yeah,
rewarded.
yeah, yeah. I was actually surprised you didn't have them at number one for that because
No, the quick trade
yeah,
brings them down. That's the thing.
yeah, I reckon that levels them out, right?
Yeah.
But you were probably one of the happiest people I've ever seen. Like you don't even like the Kings, like the Kings aren't your favorite team or anything like that. But you saw Lemieux traded and you were like, whoa, Kings have all of a sudden become you know, a team that I like.
Mm. Alrighty. On to my P6. I have the Colorado Avalanche.
Cool. I haven't moved the Avs. I just couldn't punish them. I know they didn't have a great week, but it was also a pretty tough week.
Yeah, no, they have once again, like Vegas, one of the hardest schedules. They beat Vegas 3-0. They lose 7-5 to New Jersey. They were down, um,
5-1.
somewhat, yeah, 5-1 at some point. So I don't know how good you look at that. It's a good try to come back, but also they went down 5-1. And then they get, somewhat destroyed a little bit by Dallas 7-3. So I had to punish them a bit, but it is a very hard schedule, and I just had to reward other teams like LA that just did that a little bit more. Had a better last 10 record as well, though Colorado's isn't bad at 6-2-2. So yeah, that's my reasoning. These are definitely one of the scariest teams coming into the playoffs. Getting good at the right time. So definitely
Mhm.
one of the concerning ones. Yeah.
For sure. All right. My P5, another team that had a so-so week, but I just yeah, like I'm I still have a fear of this team. Like yeah, I feel like this year for them in playoffs, even though they've got a lot to prove. I still feel like they can be really, really damaging, and they're headed in the right direction. So I just couldn't punish them this week. It's the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, number 4 for me. They don't move.
Yeah,
It's pretty steady.
I yeah, honestly, I think they're a really exciting team. They made some of the best trade moves you know, leading up to the deadline. They didn't give away a lot. They got in a lot. Yeah, they gave up Rasmus Sandin, but I feel like the players they got in return definitely strengthened and definitely gave them what they needed. So yeah, I think these guys are as geared up for a playoff run as they've ever been. So sorry, Leafs fans, but if you don't get out of the first round this year, that's on you.
Yeah, my concern with the Leafs is the amount of trades they've done. Like you look at it, they get Shen, Gustafson, what is it? McCabe, Lafferty, O'Reilly, and Achari. So that's six. That's 6 players, right? That's that's basically 2 lines on the forward line, or your whole entire defense. It's like a 33% or something like that of your team, and I just don't know if that's too much of a shake up, and that's my concern with them. If they've
Hmm.
it's shaken up too much, they had an average week. They beat Kraken, lose to Oilers, beat Calgary on a back to back, and then they lose to Canucks. Only scoring 1 goal against one of the poorest defenses in the league. So yeah, I still have my concerns with how many moves they did. Even if you can say they're great or good, it's too much. That is which what concerns me.
Yeah, I get that. I think it's understandable, but I also think he had to do something. Their defense has been a big issue for a while. Their bottom six has been one of their troubled areas, and he's gone and basically putting Ryan O'Reilly on the third. He's got Jari for the fourth, who's fantastic. Lafferty down there as well, just adds to it. Um, and then you look at defense wise, he's gone and got three pretty good defenders. Like Luke Shen is going to be fantastic, even if he is on that third line pairing. But Jake McCabe, great pickup. He's going to be really solid and really helpful for them. Exactly what they need: a bit of grit, bit of grunt, and they get that from all three: McCabe, Shen, and Gustafsson. And that's why he got them, was for more of that grit that they lack. Um, so yeah, I get what you're saying with, it's a lot. He has shaken it up right before playoffs, but I also think he's brought in the right players as well. I
Yeah,
think
that's
he's
fair
brought
enough.
in the players that they need.
Alrighty. On to number three, I have a little swap, the Carolina Hurricanes.
Oh,
Yes, I've done the swap.
yeah. I couldn't make that swap. I understand it. Um, I just basically Canes lost to Vegas in regulation. Devils lost to Vegas in shootout.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah,
the kind of, Devils, like you said, destroyed Vegas. They had no right besides the goalie being the goalie. They basically
yeah,
destroyed the Avs. They were 5-1 up, but then, just a little bit of a comeback from the Avs, like you would expect from such a quality team. And then, Carolina beat Arizona. But I feel like they've been 50-50 for a while now. And I just think the Devils are just playing that little bit more like sound hockey. Like I'm a little bit more scared of the Devils going in with their speed, their defense. Though it has shown some lapses here and there, and then uh, their goaltending as well. I feel like I feel like Vanacek's a little bit stronger than the Carolina Hurricanes tandems. So yeah, that's why I've done it. In regards to putting them at three, and it's very close though. And they're very close in the standings as well. It's basically a little a sprint to the end to see who finishes on top of the division, and hopefully
yeah.
somewhat gets an easier playoff compared to facing New York Rangers or something.
Well, yeah. I mean, you'd say they probably whoever finishes top gets the easier team. But in saying that, the Islanders have made the Eastern Conference Finals regularly over the past few years, so they're they're no chumps come playoff time. So I don't know necessarily how much difference that first or second spot in the Metro is going to make, but it definitely makes for great viewing because it is one hell of a chase right now. But yeah, look, I could have had either of these. I could have had Devils at two, Canes at three. Um, but yeah, I went with just sticking with what I had.
Yeah, fair enough. Um, I guess
Yeah,
so.
I
It's pretty
guess.
obvious what your next pick is.
Nah, I've got Devils at one. Um, nah, it's yeah. Look, they're playing some exciting hockey. I think. No one expected this. They get one of the biggest trade pieces in the deadline in Timo Meyer. They didn't give up. I felt like it was a fair trade, but they didn't give up any massive pieces that sort of would have hurt their future going forward. They managed to keep all of their main prospects as well as
Yeah.
absolutely bolster their lineup. So yeah, Devils are definitely geared for a playoff run, but if it doesn't happen this year and they do get kicked out relatively quickly, they're built for the next 5+ years. So yeah,
No,
it's a
all
really
they
good
need is
time to
some
be a
playoff
Devils fan.
experience, don't they?
Oh,
They
exactly right.
That's all they need under
Yeah.
like Jack Hughes and all that type of belt. Just some playoff experience, show what it's like,
Mm,
show how competitive and hard it is, and get that experience for the future. Um,
mm.
yeah, like you said, I feel like they've been playing some amazing hockey. I don't feel like they get outplayed very often. And if it is, it's because of some stupid mistake on their own part. Generally, it's either a Hamilton or a Severson that makes a stupid move, and that's your offensive D-man. That comes with the trade of having that title, an offensive D-man. Um, and that's kind of just the flaws I see is when they offer up pucks and whatnot. other than that, they're very sound. I'd probably say they have one of the best fourth lines in the league in regards to the BMW line. Like you watch it, the forechecking is probably one of the best in the league. It's just they're so strong on the puck on the wall. They always win it, and that is why they're such a strong fourth line, and allows their D men to get shots. And they, you know, Bastions probably and Wood are really good at screening as well. So they got a really undersung fourth line. It's going to be hard to come up against when you get into playoffs if you're the Carolina or Rangers or whoever that you verse first, second, whatever rounds.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely going to be an interesting playoff series. But I guess without any ado, we all know who's going to be at number one because after a 10-game winning streak, if you had anyone else at number one, I'd probably question your knowledge on the
Knowledge
game
on
of
hockey.
hockey. Yeah.
Yeah, well, like
Um,
they haven't lost in double digits in regulation. Yeah, they're
oh,
still at 8, so
it's
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 phenomenal.
incredible.
But
I'm seeing memes go around at the moment about Tampa Bay Lightning fans going, "It'll happen to you. It'll happen to you." And it's terrifying to think because they're not a team that after this sort of performance deserve to be kicked out in the first round. But neither was Tampa Bay and they got swept. So
Yep.
playoffs is a funny game, but yeah, if you're a Boston fan, I think it's hard. What do you think for this team? You know, is it Stanley Cup appearance or it's fail? Or is it at least making the Eastern Conference Finals? Like,
Nah,
what's the
it's
expectation?
Stanley Cup. It's Stanley Cup or fail. Like they're really all
It's
in
kind
for this one year.
kind of
So
has to be, right? Like,
yeah.
you know, they've gone and got Bertuzzi and a couple other pieces in the deadline as well, and 105 goal difference, 103 points in 62 games.
I think they're
Haven't
the
lost
fastest
more than
team to 100 points as well.
yeah, they were. And
Uh,
and like you said, they've only lost 8 times in regulation.
mm.
It's the season is phenomenal by Boston at
I
the
think
moment.
I think this might be one of the best teams there's ever been in NHL in history.
Yeah.
Honestly,
But
that
but
I'm going to say it just because how perfect it lines up.
oh,
Um,
home and away season, 100%. Uh,
mm,
but the craziest thing about it is no one expected this, right? Like you look at the Tampa Bay season they had where they were just pure dominance and then got swept in the playoffs. You kind of understood that. You saw that coming. It was like, yeah, Tampa Bay, they're good. They've been coming for a while. So yeah, this is it's expected. This Boston, this wasn't expected. No one saw this coming. People were questioning whether or not they'd be in the playoffs. I mean, we both thought that they'd
I think they were pretty ridiculous to think that. Honestly, I always thought they were
oh, a
playoffs.
hundred percent.
Yeah.
100%. So did I. I thought, yeah, Boston definitely playoffs, but
Mm,
I didn't think top of the league playoffs. I thought they'll
yeah.
be top three, obviously. It'll be a fight with the Leafs and Tampa, but it'll be close. It's not close.
No.
They're 19 points clear of Toronto in second.
Mm. They're 13
It's
points
yeah.
clear of the second in the league. Like they're double
Oh,
their goal differential. Uh,
yeah. Yeah, it's phenomenal.
it's really flawless. I love what they did. You know, the whole trade adding Zaka, like both players are great, but I feel like Zaka just fits that Boston so well.
Hmm.
And this is what happens, you know, when you have a team, Oilers. Like you look at this and you have, you know, basically legends, even if you know you hate Marchand and whatnot, like these really strong, really great players. When they take, you know, those salary cuts to help out the team, this is what you can build, and the greatest team of all time, in my opinion. Especially just for home and away, I'll say. But I feel like it's one of
Yeah.
the greatest teams of all time, and that's the difference to a team like Oilers, where you know you have somewhat of a greedy person in McDavid, and that's what happens. Instead of taking a 10 mil, 9 mil, this is what happens. I'm loving it. I'm glad I'm alive to see it, and it's great to view.
Yeah, no, it has been. Yeah, honestly, it's been a pleasure to watch Boston play, and they're absolutely flawless. And you said it. This is what having four solid forward lines, three solid defensive lines, and two very good goaltenders. I mean, that's probably one of the big benefits is they don't just have Allmark, they've also got Swayman. That's probably one of the big things that have helped them. But yeah,
But
it's
well,
just
their goalies scored more goals than some defenders in the league, like, or even forwards.
yeah,
Just think about that.
yeah, yeah, insane, right? But yeah, yeah, no, you cannot fault Boston at all this year, and yeah, I kind of hope they do turn up in the playoffs because it would be a damn shame to see a season like this go to waste. But yeah, guys, that's it for the power rankings this week. Another one in the bag. It's sort of dwindling down. I don't know how many weeks we got left, probably five or something like that. So yeah, we're almost at the end. Interested to see how much more it's going to shift throughout the remaining weeks. But yeah, as always, guys, let us know your thoughts down below, your power rankings, what you think or where you think teams should be, whether we got it right or wrong. If we got it wrong, let us know. We'd love the feedback. As always, if you like the video, give us a big thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. We really appreciate the support. And until next time, guys, take care.
Cheers.